Welcome, Agile professionals, to our meetup for June. Let me think. So a little bit about REI System for those that are new. REI Systems is a software development company specializing in grants management solutions. That's our big specialty, and we work for NASA. We do open government solutions for the federal government, and we are hiring. So if you are interested in looking into it, we're one of the top places to work in DC, according to the Washington Post. Have a look at our website and see if it's something that you think might be for you. Today we have a very special guest, especially considering REI Systems. So REI System has been going through this transformative journey to really incorporate the Agile principles into everything that it does, into how it does business, how it conducts itself, both inside and outside. And we started this journey about 3 years ago, and it all started with just a group of people inside the company who really felt that this was something that had to be adopted by everyone in the company, and these were principles that had to kind of drive the way that we work together and improve the way that we work together. And it all started with this group of people who got together and started this meetup and invited Manjit to come and give a talk. And I'll never forget the day when he was here, and we had both of these rooms completely full with most people in the company who had never really, had been resisting Agile or had questions about it, weren't sure, were skeptical about it. And then Manjit came and talked and gave this presentation and kind of talked with everyone and answered questions. And then when we had talks about agility before, but everyone usually walked out with more questions than they had. And when everyone walked out of this meetup, it was like everyone left with a light bulb over their head. And I'll never forget that. And since then, Manjit has been working with REI Systems in helping us through our journey. And it's my great honor and privilege to introduce him to our meetup today. Let's give a hand for Manjit.
Thank you. Thank you, Matthias. That's very generous of you. More deserving than is necessary. I'm just a practitioner, very passionate about Agile. And today I'm going to talk about something which is, I don't know, maybe some of you may agree, maybe some of you may disagree, but that's okay. The purpose is to spark some conversation and thoughts. How many of you are currently part of an Agile transformation adoption? Okay, almost everybody. All right. And so as you're doing this, if I can hear from one or two of you, what has been the primary motivation to do this? Whether it's internal or if you're as a consultant working at a customer site, what was the main driver for this? If somebody could share, at least two people.
So driver,
what's motivating the organization to adopt Agile or to transform itself?
Oh, it's basically the Agile, the results brought in by Agile.
The results that Agile promises.
Right. So obviously we have a long list of results that are, various surveys were done, and then changes the way they change there, faster time to market, and then everything and so on and on.
And your organization has seen those results?
We just started
You just started.
transformation.
Okay.
So that's why they hired me there.
Okay.
I'd say the folks I'm working with, they're interested in Agile transformation because it's perceived as modern and sexy, and they want to be cool.
It's the Baywatch version of corporate management.
Perhaps it's a style thing.
And they're seeing the results. They have a lean body. They can they can run on the beach at high speed.
Yeah, they're in love with the idea, but not the work.
Yes, Dave.
My boss gets to do exactly what he wants in this agile organization is he gets to keep saying how agile's not working.
Okay,
Agile promised this, and we're only getting this. Therefore,
it's not working.
he's exactly what he wants to do.
Okay. All right, yes, sir.
Sure. I was with a brick and mortar company, and they had an old mainframe, and they really could not keep up with the marketplace. And they were bringing in web technologies, and they were bringing in Agile as a solution. The primary goal was to manage IT instead of IT managing the company.
Okay,
And their success was about 50-50.
okay,
They brought in new staff really for the web development side, and they had a lot of success with that. They built everything from the ground up, but they still had a really hard time with the mainframe side.
okay,
And it was an adoption issue. The people there just did not want to change.
okay. Sanjeev?
Yeah. So I think for us, I work for the World Bank, it has been an evolution. So we've been on this transformation journey in HR, we've been deploying Lean Six Sigma. But in spite of seeing some results there, I think the organization is expecting more. So we're now adopting Agile to be more responsive.
Okay.
That's what we're trying to do.
So if you were to describe in 1 or 2 sentences, what is that end stage your organization is striving for?
The end state is to be a faster and a better bank.
Okay? Faster and better bank. Anybody else? In 1 sentence, if you could say, what you're striving for? What's the end goal?
My less facetious answer than my previous one is we were able to make commitments contractually, but we can shift what the project is working on.
Okay?
Incremental value delivery to the customer in the fastest amount of time.
Okay.
So I would say serve our customer better than yesterday.
Cover better than yesterday. Okay. So, many organizations today are doing this because of this primary reason, because disruption is on the horizon. Either it is, or they're already in the midst of this disruption. You talked about brick and mortar company, so they've already faced this.
Yeah.
Correct? So either you're already in the midst of disruption and your business is now at danger of basically closing shop, or disruption is right at knocking at your door. That's what's the primary driver. However, the problem is that with a lot of organizations, they don't seem to really understand what to do with it. They don't know what to do. The disruption is there, but they don't know what to do. And so they know they need to improve, but they don't know how. They don't know where to begin. And the biggest reason is because they don't know what they want. A lot of time, a lot of organizations are adopting Agile because it's the Baywatch. It is, seriously. That's the show name, right? I just want to make sure I'm using the right analogy. I think that's what it is, because it's the new sexiest thing on the block, and I want it. It's like the new shiny object, and that's the reason. But this is what they face. They don't know where they're going. They don't know where they're going. They don't know what the end state is. So that's why they have mixed results. You're fortunate that you have a 50-50 result. That's tremendously good. Most organizations are way below than that. They have seen very marginal improvements, and they're wondering, like he said earlier, even though he was joking, but that's actually true. A lot of organizations are not realizing the true power of Agile because they don't know why they're doing it. I met with a potential client about 2 months ago, maybe 6 weeks ago, and the C-suite was sitting there, the CIO, CTO, the senior VPs, and I asked them, why do you want to do this? And they knew the answer. Without even blinking an eye, the CIO said, we want to go to market in half the time. We want to go to market in half the time. And it's a 65, 70-year-old insurance company stuck in waterfall world with legacy systems, and that's their goal. And that tells you what's driving them. So it's easy to measure. Now you can measure everything because we want to reduce this time from, what do you call it, birth to, whatever that
Concept to cash.
Yeah, so they want to do that in half the time. So that's easy. But with a lot of organizations, that's not what the case. Right? The other challenge is, with a lot of organizations, because of the current environment, the uncertainty is so high that people don't know how to manage. How do you manage your organization and your business in this current environment of uncertainty? There is so much uncertainty that it is mind-boggling. As humans and as a civilization, we haven't seen the amount of uncertainty that we see today. Even though we have so much technology and so much science advancements have been made, there's a lot of uncertainty. So, what I'm going to do is talk you through some of these topics, and I'm going to put forth a premise, and then we'll see what you think. Okay? But here is what's happening in a lot of organizations. To give you an example. This is what's happening. Is it audio?
You have many parallel projects ongoing, but nothing moves. Everyone is waiting for information, resources, or decisions. You spend your time in endless meetings, planning, and rework. You are experiencing coordination chaos. But how did you get there? Here we have Dan. He's heading a fast-growing software-based business. The company is growing using common sense. Everyone focuses on their specialty because that's what they were hired to do. And it seems efficient. Talented, enthusiastic people just make it work. The success is based on the informal communication network. Specialization works, and it becomes the unquestioned norm. So whenever there is a problem, a new kind of specialist is hired or nominated. The number of specialists keeps increasing, and the complexity grows. In order to get things done, the company now hires a coordination specialist. Nina is the project manager. The business grows. More customers, more products, more specialists, more coordinators. The project managers, now headed by Nina, somehow pull it together. They become the heroes who squeeze value out of the messy organization. But the more the organization grows, the more chaotic it gets. Nina's project managers use the best processes and tools, but are not able to create results like before. The key people are torn between several projects. They are working days, nights, weekends, and holidays. They are burning out. Meanwhile, some other specialists are idling because their specialty is not needed at the moment. Experienced people start to leave. The organization has become too complex to be coordinated. The top management sits down to figure it out. Resources are not optimally allocated. The people should focus more on the projects and less on other stuff. We have to tighten the ship, clarify the roles and responsibilities, define detailed processes, measure and reward individual performance. This is what management consultants advise. Unfortunately, the management action breaks the informal knowledge sharing network, and things get even messier. More control and more bureaucrats, but less outcome. The company becomes slow and expensive compared to emerging rivals. The top management tries to find another solution. We still have a strong customer base, but the new competitors eat our profit margin. People are not productive and projects have become slow. We have tried everything, but we are powerless in improving the situation. Let's outsource the problem to a contractor specialized in providing resources. We can then control the contractor by commercial agreements. Nina has studied some lean and agile. She disagrees with the management plan. Dan sees the challenges with outsourcing. The problem is not about people, it is the system. Outsourcing the leadership problem would complicate things even more. But just using lean and agile best practices to improve the coordination does not solve the root cause, which is the over-specialization of the people and fragmentation of the organization. Dan sees the light. We need to think completely differently. The problem is our old thinking, where others think and others do. Others decide and others coordinate. Some companies have taken another path. They trust in customer-oriented learning and cross-functional teams. Project managers are not coordinating plans and resources. The business decision-making is fast and close to the teams.
So, that scenario that I described, does that sound familiar? Too many teams, too many resources, too many specializations. Anybody familiar with that? Seen that? Yes, no? Yeah. Yeah. So business agility, people have lots of different definitions of this, and it doesn't matter how you define it. Okay, it doesn't matter. There are different ways in which people frame this. Create and respond to change in order to profit in a turbulent business environment. probably the most likely and the best way to look at it, given the amount of disruption, uncertainty, and complexity, right? And like somebody mentioned, ability to create value and to continuously, exceed the expectations of a customer, while still thriving in a changing, constantly uncertain, complex environment. So these are some of the common definitions people use. And yes, that's true, but what do you do? How do you achieve that agility? And this is where agile transformation is seen as the solution, right? So there are lots of different transformation methods and techniques and frameworks. There is no one way. There is no prescriptive way that you can say, here is a prescription for your organization to follow, and you will achieve business agility, or you will achieve organizational agility. And different organizations have created these different frameworks. Anybody here using any certain particular approach towards their agile adoption transformation? Anybody? Safe, less, traditional Scrum at scale, safe?
Trying to say.
Scrum, safe. Okay, you? Basic Scrum?
Me eating pizza. So Scrum.
Scrum, okay. And then there are lots of other ways that people also use to try to measure this agility. And nothing wrong with that. They are sincere attempts. But I'm not sure if they end up in the type of result you're looking for. It's more like this. And we're trying to really get Agile established in an organization. It's a struggle. Right? It's a big struggle because of the way the culture is, the way habits have been established within the organization, processes, bureaucracy, structure. Structure plays a key role, whether you can be nimble and agile, depending on how teams are structured, how your organization is structured overall. Right? The other part becomes is, how many of you wake up in the morning and you first thing the thought comes to your mind is, I want to transform myself? Anybody do that?
Once in a while, but not every day.
Not once in a while, not every day.
Maybe once a year.
Maybe once a year.
Or New Year time, right?
Yeah, December 31st every year I create a list for this is what I'm going to transform myself. Right? And what happens? They say by the time you get to Jan 31st, 90% of the resolutions are forgotten. Because it's not easy. So it's the same thing with our organization. And when we think about transformation, it sounds like, if there's something wrong with you that we need to transform. And that itself brings a certain mindset, right? When you say, I'm going to change you, what's wrong with me that I need to change? And that it's kind of a negative connotation on that, right? The other thing is, to truly have a different way of doing things, one has to realize from within that you have a way to constantly improve. Okay? And this is where the Japanese have been very successful. They talk about continuous improvement, and they don't talk in the context of change. They don't talk in the context of transformation. They talk in the context of continuous improvement. It could be a small thing. It could be a very small thing, but they're talking about a continuous improvement. And that is because they have developed that thinking and that mindset. It's like their second nature. No matter what they do, they're thinking about what can I improve? What can I do better? Okay? This is a true story. A couple of months ago, I read the book, The Toyota Way, by Taiichi Ono, who was the main person who developed the Toyota production system. And in there was one incident or anecdote he describes that caught my eye. This was in the initial years of when he was trying to apply this lean, continuous improvement mindset. So in the assembly floor, he wanted to make one change to see if the work would flow a little bit more smoothly on the assembly line. And he moved a couple of machines on the assembly line to experiment and see if that change would work. And he writes that he had to wait for 1 year to see if that change actually produced the desired results. 1 year. Think about that. He said, I observed that change that I made for a year before I decided to make any new change. He was doing other changes, but on that particular aspect, he waited for 1 year. Now, how many of us have that patience to wait for a year to see if a change actually has a desired effect? Okay? And he would study. He would spend hours observing how things were working on the assembly line to identify what needs to be changed. That's the kind of mindset that is needed to really be agile. It's not these kind of transformations, but it's that kind of mindset. But that mindset can only, and the company can only thrive if that mindset is within every employee of the company. That's what makes it so hard. The Japanese have mastered this approach where all employees actually do this. There's another great book I read recently which talks about the 5S. The Lean has this 5S, you probably know this, right? And there's this guy who has a manufacturing company in somewhere in the Midwest, an American company. And he talks about how they incorporated the 5S. And he says when he was interested in learning about his business, he went to a Japanese company to learn. And when he walked in, he expected that the CEO greeted him. He expected him to tell him, take him to a conference room and do a briefing and then meet employees. When he walked in, they were a group. He gave each one of them a bucket and a scrub. And he said, please come with me. And the CEO and all the senior leadership got on their knees and they were cleaning the floor of the assembly of the factory. And they did that for an hour. And this guy was, what's this got to do with Lean? What's this got to do with being? You got to read the book to find out the answer. It's much deeper, and I'm going to mess it up and screw it up.
What's the name?
The name. I will give you the name before the end of the session. It's on my Kindle. And it is mind-boggling as to how to look at this. It is way beyond how we approach it. And that's why the Japanese truly imbibe what it means to be truly agile and lean. They truly have the agility that we are all striving for. So this thing about transformation, it really has to come from within. Now, what happens when you apply a transformation, right? So let's talk about, you take a framework. These are all the rules of the framework, and you start applying them. So some of them are applied to the tools, some are applied to the process, some to the people. Yes? And then maybe some other areas here. I just picked up 3 kind of big buckets. Processes, tools, and people. Those are the 3 things that most commonly affects, the transformation affects. Anybody want to guess how much time is spent on each one of these 3? When you try to do an agile adoption or a transformation, what percentage of time is spent on processes, tools, and people?
Majority is on tools actually.
Too much time is spent on tools. Too much time. What about process?
A lot.
And what you need to spend 80 to 85% time on people. It's the people. It are the people who use the tools. It is the people who adopt and own the process, not the other way around. You may have the world's best tools. It's like having the world's most sophisticated car. But if you have a driver who doesn't know how to drive, doesn't know how to operate it, what's the point of having the world's best car? Right? So our stress and our focus in a lot of these adoptions and transformations on these, and the people part gets very little attention.
A quick question. Do we get the slides or do we make notes?
I can provide you the slides, no problem. But if you make notes, you'll remember it better.
That's why I got my stickies.
If you make notes, you will remember it better. So anybody here who has seen where the adoption transformation focuses most of the time on people? No. So that's why we don't see the results. want to share something?
It wouldn't be good.
It would be good. But what happens is organizations are in rush to get results. Right? It's like a drive-through McDonald's. Give me 2 large agile, agile servings of this. Give me 1 small agile, thing of that.
With fries.
With fries, yes. And some ketchup. That's what we're looking for.
But even your insurance company, well, we want to deliver in half the time. Did they say we want to deliver in half the time in the next year, or we want to deliver in half the time over the next 5 years?
They didn't. They haven't. They haven't.
Haven't given the second.
They haven't given a time frame. But here is the other interesting thing. So this is actually a true story. So I had this conversation 6 weeks ago, and they said, give us 2 weeks. We're going to meet internally, and we'll get back to you. And then I left for India, so I told them, I said, when I come back, I will reconnect with you. I called the guy today at about 2:15, and he says, I was just about to draft you an email. I did get your email. We haven't met since you were here. So what does that tell you?
Low priority.
Low priority.
Yeah.
Right? So I told them, that's fine. When you're ready, give me a call. It's as simple as that. Right? I told them, when you're ready, give me a call. They're going through some big system upgrade. It's going to happen next weekend, blah, 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 blah. I said, that's fine, no worries. Take your time. When you're ready, give me a call. Right? So they want to reduce their time to market in half, but it's not an urgency, it can wait. I don't get that. But that's okay. And by the way, 90% of the companies are like this.
Right.
Our house is on fire, we really need to put it out, but we're too busy. So we'll get in touch with you when we're ready. I don't get this logic, but that's okay. But that's what's happening, right? So people want to have business agility, but they don't know why they want it, what it would look like, and then they don't know how to get there. And the reason I say is people start with the third one. Just let's start doing something so we become more agile. They don't know why they want it, they don't know where they want to go with it. I wish it was that simple.
He knows. I agree.
Okay.
Or for the optics, our team is doing something new.
Sure, you can do something new. One could look up some very exotic dance on YouTube and start doing that. Why spend numerous millions of dollars on expensive consultants? Just do something different.
Sounds good in the board.
It sounds good in the boardroom. That's what it is. Sounds good in the boardroom. So,
Actually, no, I'm going to hold my question till the end. I'm writing it down.
okay. So true agility is actually, so that's why my question was, is agility and transformation yin and yang, are the Siamese twins, or is it something else? So when I say Siamese twins, what I mean is they're joined at the hip, like Siamese twins. You can't have agility until you have transformation. That's the visualization. The yin and yang is they are so intertwined that they feed on each other. That's the other visualization, or the analogy I'm trying to use. And the third one is, or is it something else? It's not either one of these. It's not either one of these. And I think, and I believe, and what I've seen over these many years that I've been doing this, it's not either one of those. It's completely something different which we are missing. So it's these 5 ingredients, I believe. And there may be others, but these, I think at this point, I feel these 5 are the most key. Employee empowerment, trust and safety, dedicated teams, a learning organization, and Slack. We'll dive into this. So, employee empowerment. A great example of this, I just read this, I don't know if anybody who read this. So, it was in the news a few days ago that Google gives every employee a credit card to charge the company expenses.
And also Amazon gives $5,000 for
Yes, so think about this. How many of you have a credit card from your company to charge company expenses rather than submit only one person, rather than submit claims and get reimbursed? So 2 people, you do?
I don't, but my daughter does.
Your daughter does?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but what exactly is the point?
The point, so I'm coming to that, what's the point? What's the point, anybody?
Save time.
Huh?
No,
Save time, what is
you're
this?
empowering the person to make accountable for what the expenses and everything else.
And it ties to number 2, you trust them.
So the assumption is they're not having to submit claims, correct?
Right, so what happens, think about this. So much time and effort goes into somebody, not somebody, but maybe it's a lot, somebody like an organization like Google, you need several people to process those claims, right? Which means they're not delivering value to the customer. Those people are not delivering value to the customer. They're not generating value for the organization. Am I right? So that's an example of employee empowerment. It's a very real world example of something that's in the news. Okay? We hire brilliant people. I forget who said that. We hire brilliant people, but then
You can do stupid things.
then we tell them to do stupid things. We don't trust them that they will use their best judgment. Right? It's like hiring a mechanic who's very skilled at it, but then you tell the mechanic how to repair your car. We don't do that, do we? You go to the mechanic who's well rated, has good reviews, is trusted, and you give them your car and you trust they'll fix it. You don't tell them how to fix it. But we do that with our employees. We disempower them the moment they walk into the door. And we continue to disempower them on an ongoing basis. A lot of process-oriented focus. And we think this kind of process obsession is actually bad. This is the wrong kind of obsession. It's for a bad process, not for an empowering process. It's a disempowering process. Okay? There's another example of this. There are some organizations that say you can take as much time off as you want. We don't need to keep record. We know you'll be responsible. You won't ask to go on a vacation when there is a critical piece of work that needs to be done. Simple. And what I found is when you give people that kind of trust, they actually, handle it with more responsibility. They handle it with more responsibility. Okay. So the idea is to empower rather than keep power in your upper hierarchy, to push the power down as much as you can. Then comes this whole thing about knowledge work. If you're doing knowledge work, you cannot have the same kind of expectations that you do when you're doing manufacturing work, when you're doing defined, definitive assembly line type of work. With creative knowledge work, you have to give the teams the latitude to come up with the best thinking or the best solution. So rather than focus on all this knowledge, you want to empower your employees to actually act and do something. Try something. Kids, when you see them, when you give them something new, they don't sit down and think, what is going to be my WBS to assemble this toy? They just do it. They just get started. They just get started. Trust and safety.
Can I make a comment on the previous one?
Yes, please.
So I've heard a lot of times coaches and agilists talk about widgets and stuff, and that has always something that jarred me a lot because that's the terminology of manufacturing. And for knowledge work, using the widgets and stuff like that does not connect.
Absolutely. I agree. It doesn't. It doesn't. It's like, how many of you have done coding in the past? Anybody done coding? So some of you. So I know when I used to do coding, after a few days, or even if, sometimes just the very next day, you look at a piece of a code and you see, well, I could have done that differently. I can improve that. Yes or no?
Yeah.
Because it's creative work. It's like an artist, they're painting, and they say, I can make this a little bit darker, I can make this lighter, I can add something. So it's not predefined. You may get inspiration on different aspects of the work that you're doing at any given time. It's not predetermined. So absolutely, you can't compare that to assembly work, to manufacturing work. Failure. So this is another key thing. When you make failure punishable or reprimandable, then people are not going to take chances. Why would I stick my neck out and then get chastised in public before everybody about what I tried? I had good intentions, but nobody cares about that. All they care about is the fact that I failed. There are organizations that actually encourage people to try new stuff because they want to learn from it. They have that experimentation mindset designed for learning, and they know failure is part of it. No discovery in this world, no invention in this world has been achieved without failure. Right? We all know that, and there are a lot of stories about that, from Edison to take any scientist. There are a lot of stories about that. Okay, and this is where how you treat your employees and how you deal with the level of trust that you empower them with determines how willing they are to try something. There are organizations that create a failure wall. The idea is to, on the wall, to publicly talk about, this is what I tried and this is what I learned. It failed, but this is what I learned from it. So as long as there is a learning that comes out of it, it's not failure. You wouldn't have learned that if you hadn't tried it. So making it safe to fail is very key to have that sense of agility. Another true story. Many years ago, a developer at Amazon had the idea of putting up recommendations when somebody buys an item in the shop, on the online store. Right? So you buy a book, and now we get recommendations. Hey, other people bought this. Maybe you may like this. So he came up with that idea. And you know what he did? He just coded it up and pushed it out to production. He didn't ask his manager. He just did it. And it was a huge success. So they had a culture which encouraged that. Otherwise, imagine if you were to do this in a traditional organization, it would take days, weeks, months, God knows how long. This guy just went live and it worked. So that's another example of how organizations are creating that culture of trust. This one talks about dedicated teams. Anybody here, any thoughts on why I included this? Scott?
The teams are the foundation of an actual organization.
But why have dedicated teams?
Well, the people on the team are dedicated to the team's work, so the team can learn and depend upon each other. If the people are...
So this is slightly different. What I mean is, I should have maybe called it, what's a better way to define this? Dedicated teams. My intent was to communicate that they are, they don't disintegrate after a project or something else. They stay
Long-lived
together.
teams?
Long-lived teams.
Yes.
That's what I meant by
that's
dedicated
different,
teams.
yeah.
You were going to say something, Dave?
No, I was going to say it's a lot about trust, that within the team, but also externally to the team, I know what to expect of those 5 people. And so we can ask them to do X, Y, and Z, and they can say, oh yeah, we've done X and Y, so we're pretty sure that we can do X, Y, and Z in this amount of time.
True. What else?
Well, I was going to say something similar also, that the team itself, they buy in to the idea, whatever you're trying to achieve, I guess, the goals.
True, but there's something else, a little bit more deeper.
Your team spends time forming,
Yes.
and they're less productive in terms of output during that forming phase. Once they've formed, then they can become a high-performing team.
Correct.
If you disintegrate the teams all the time, you're losing all that time. You've invested that time, you've lost it, and have to go through it all again.
Absolutely. That's a true reason. And organizations are paying a hidden price every time they disintegrate a team that has already been established. A team that's working well, every time they disintegrate that, oh, we have a new project, so we're going to take 3 of you, put it on that team, the other 2 go on that team, the other go on that. You are paying such a heavy price for that.
And it's treating people like Lego pieces.
And that's what happens. Fungible resources.
I've tried to coach the managers on that, and they come back to me with, well, that's not fair to the employee to only work with these few employees.
Ask the employee.
Well, okay, yeah.
Ask the employee, you want to continue to work with this team? If the employee comes and tells you, hey, I would like a new challenge, I think the work this team is getting, I would like
Some do say that, yeah.
Yeah, ask the employees.
I'm playing devil's advocate.
Yes.
So forgive me for what I'm about to say.
No.
There's another response to this is change is inevitable. So eventually somebody's going to move on to something else. So wouldn't it be better for the employees to practice readjusting, going through that storming, norming, forming, performing faster because they've gotten accustomed to how to adjust to new people.
I wish that was true, but I don't think there's any faster way to achieve that. It's like going on a date with somebody for the first time and getting faster at developing a relationship. Is there a formula for that? There isn't. Maybe you have it?
Actually, I do have.
You do have it. Then
I'm sure
you got to patent it and you got to come up with a new
Your
e-harmony.
metaphor breaks because my wife and I met through OkCupid, and a lot of the things that you would do through the first couple of dates, we met through OkCupid. We looked at each other's questions.
Maybe there is a formula. I don't know. Where was it when I needed it? No, I'm just kidding.
But my point is, and again, I'm paying devil's advocate. I do feel that.
No, it's a fair question, but I think there is. I wish there was a case, but there is no formula for that for making it quicker, faster. There isn't. There isn't. Every environment is different. Every situation is different. Every individual is different.
I'm going to tend to agree with you based on experience. I worked at one company and they even had the type of team that was working together. There was the team that was really good at producing new software, and then there was the team that was really good at coming in when everything has gone wrong. They just had the people on there that knew how to handle those, like, everything's wrong in production situations. And in that case, it didn't really matter what the situation was. They kind of knew how to do it. Kind of with the software team as well. It doesn't really matter what the software was. They kind of knew how to work together, and they got a lot done very quickly.
But isn't it like if you go the same team, then the learning will be in that team itself, and then something, and that you want to be spread out to the teams as well, so that you have the software, you need to know the data.
So there are ways to address that. That's a fair question. There are ways to address it. Then you take somebody from that team on a temporary basis, to become an ambassador with another team, to teach them the kind of things that they know, and then they come back. So it's temporary, but it's not permanent.
I don't know, but sometimes I'm hearing that even modern has to be fungible, being an agile. They say agile means you have to be fungible.
No.
So
this is. I need to start recording all the myths and stereotypes people have about agile. It's just mind-boggling. I was doing a training in India. There was this one guy in the room, and through the first day of the training, he says, "So far, everything that I've heard looks like a robot could do. We don't need an actual human as a Scrum Master." And I was blown away. I was blown away. I'd never heard that. He said, "Why do you need a person? If they're conducting all these ceremonies, a robot could do that." I was just dumbfounded for like 2 minutes. I didn't know how to respond.
I think it's a very valid point that how people translate the word fungible and correlate it with the T and E resources. So they think that that's interchangeable, and it is not.
This year concept relates to or refers to treating people as objects. Hey, this table, I need it in that room, I'm going to just take it there. Right? That's how it is. Because it has only one purpose, and I can use it for that purpose anywhere I want. And that's what I mean by using it as a fungible resource.
That's the widget mentality.
That's right.
The what mentality?
The mindset that people are, in manufacturing process, you manufacture widgets. So essentially, people are producing knowledge output or kind of like machines.
I see.
So you can, try to move machines and produce whatever you want, stuff like that.
So, I was recently in a leadership conference, and I think the topic was humans are not resources; they are a possibility. And I think the whole conversation this happening in India was how leaders need to actually create an ecosystem where you can actually get the full potential
Absolutely.
of the human beings.
Absolutely.
Actually. And to me, it was very interesting, and I think resonates very well with what you're saying.
So if we stop looking at people as resources, then we truly recognize the potential they have. Right? They truly recognize the potential they have. So this talks about not treating people as objects, but actually as humans who have potential, and you let them achieve their potential, give them the environment in which they can thrive, and you are benefiting and they are benefiting. And that mutual learning and growth is what is the optimal that any organization can strive for. Right? Then the next one here talks about how again, when you treat these as resources, you're always looking at optimizing the resource. You're always looking at optimizing the resource. You can't have any non-billable hours, 100% utilization. I worked for IT federal contracting companies where 96% utilization. 96%. You have to be billable 96% of the time. So what happens? How do you achieve that figure? Simple answer. Anybody know? Huh?
Put it down.
No?
Yeah, I like Carrie's answer.
What did he say?
She said,
I said line.
You said 9, but there's something else.
Put it down, just write it down, the time. Okay? Tell them what they want to hear.
No. What you do is you create work. You create more work. Or you do slow work. It takes longer. You want to fill up the,
There's no
the
variation
block.
to what I was saying, yeah.
Yeah, that's what you do. It happens all the time, you just don't realize it. Either people are blind to it or they ignore it. Because everybody's doing it. Who do you call out? Everybody's doing it, everybody's playing that game. Everybody's playing that game. I can do this in 40 hours, but I don't have anything else, so rather than I sit idle, and my manager getting pissed at me, I'm going to just do it slowly. So I fill up the full 96%. That's what's happening. Because it's not safe to speak up. It's not safe to trust your employees. It's not safe to tell them, hey, I'm done. What else can I do? Okay. Learning organization. This one really is about what is the organization doing to learn and to grow itself as a, if you think of it as one unit. What is it that they're doing? How are they facilitating that within the culture of the organization? There are very few organizations that actually do this in a really effective way. Maybe some of the companies out in Silicon Valley do it, but very few other companies do it. Right? One example of this is, many years ago, and I don't know if Google still does this, but they used to give 1 day off, 20% of the time that the employee could use for whatever learning, pet projects, whatever they want to do. Atlassian does that. Right? There are several companies that do that. They give the people free, unhindered time off. I shouldn't say time off, but unhindered time to do whatever they want, to learn. So this learning is happening in all aspects. It's not just in any one aspect, right? How are you learning when it comes to your internal systems and processes? How are you learning about how your physical space is organized? How are you learning about your culture? How are you improving your leadership, your human capital? It's all aspects of it. It's not just one certain aspect. Right? Are you experimenting? Right? How do we do this? So our office is organized this way. What happens if we change something? What happens? So, becoming a learning organization is not easy. This is where organization has to commit explicitly to help grow their team members and nudge them towards learning something new and invest in them. So this is where their ability to innovate and think creatively comes in.
I find that this one, mostly the organization, even they want to push it down to the teams, so they expect the teams to do the learning. But at the higher, mid, and top leadership level, they haven't absorbed it.
They haven't absorbed it. There's only one, I think, industry which does this well on a continuous basis. It's part of the culture. Academia, universities. Okay, professors are not expected to teach every single day, 8 hours a day. They are given time to do research, to learn. That's how they thrive. That's how they come up with new discoveries. That's how it happens. In fact, it's expected of them. Otherwise, you don't get tenured. And even after you get tenured, you're expected to publish and do extensive research. So that's a great example of how this is ingrained in academia and university culture. I'm going to talk about Slack. So I'm going to stop here. What do you hear? What is your interpretation of the word Slack?
Marty McFly.
Huh?
Sorry, it's a joke. Marty McFly. You seen Back to the Future?
Yeah, I know.
Basically,
Buffer.
we need a break, a buffer, some time to.
Some free time.
So the most common answer I get is a buffer and is the wrong answer. It's not a buffer.
I mean, it would be spend the slack. It's happened, it's okay.
No, that's not what Slack is.
I say procrastination.
It's not procrastination.
And I
I would describe it as, it's gonna take you 40 hours to complete a project. If you dedicate yourself to working exactly 8 hours a day and doing nothing but, say, writing code, if that's what the project is. Slack would be, let me do 6 hours a day with 2 hours to figure out better ways to do it. 2 hours to work with other team members for collaboration so we deliver a better product. It's that, hey, I need
You're
to.
thinking in the right direction, it's not.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, but that's good, that's encouraging.
Basically, that time to introspect and retrospect.
No, it's not, it's not.
Slack to is extra.
Extra what?
Extra time.
That's the definition of, from the dictionary, that's what it is.
So,
It's a cut the slack, what do you mean, cut the slack is.
so
No,
that's used, because that's used in a slightly different context.
Yeah.
That is why you're using that, but that's not what it means. Go ahead, Scott.
If you have an organization where everybody's planned to the last minute, Slack means you leave some open time so people can adjust to stuff that's not expected.
Exactly, so slack means leaving aside some capacity without using it. Okay, leaving aside some capacity. So when, if you take the highway, right? The highway can hold 1,000 cars. Let's imagine the Dallas Toll Road from Tyson's to the Dallas airport can hold 1,000 cars. If you jam it with 1,000 cars, what will happen to the traffic? It stops. But what happens if you only fill it up to 80% or 70%? Traffic moves very smoothly. Right? Every highway has a maximum limit at which it should be utilized. The rest of the capacity of the highway has to be left unused. That's the best analogy I can give you so far.
Well, and that's that picture in Anderson's book, right, of the highway that's completely full of cars and this little motorcycle who's wondering why he's not moving anywhere because there's space for him. But he's the last possible.
That's the last possible space left, right? So slack is where you intentionally and purposely don't utilize every employee and every team to 100% capacity. Because what happens if something unplanned, unknown occurs? What do you think is the ability of the team to react to it? Close to zero. Close to zero. True story. FedEx. So FedEx, at any given moment, has 2 planes, one on the East Coast, one on the West Coast, airborne, stays airborne throughout the day. They're flying empty. Why? If any of their planes has a problem on any of the coasts, that plane which is airborne and empty is directed there to replace the plane that has a problem.
Wow.
That's slack. That's a use of slack. Now, why do you think they do that?
Because it absolutely positively has to be there by tomorrow.
That's right. I would not be using FedEx if my package is not there by tomorrow morning. Right? Now, if they had the traditional mentality of 100% utilization, they would never do that.
These planes would be full.
Huh?
These planes would be full.
So I have a question. This concept of Slack has been something that has come up several times where I work. And the one approach that I've seen is that, there's one mindset that says, 30%, your entire, 30% of your time during a sprint, you just have to leave open, no commitments, nothing. And another mindset that I've seen is that, we will commit to 70% of whatever's in the backlog, we'll commit to that. 30% we can leave it up to, if they don't have anything to do, but we identify what that 30% is, that slack, so that on a day-to-day basis, they can choose, but it's still work. So does what are your thoughts in terms of, does that qualify for slack if you have a set?
Slack is intentionally, I'm not going to plan anything for X percentage of my total capacity, period. I'm not going to plan anything. It's not like, hey, if I get that through that, then I will pick this up. No. It is you leave it aside. You have to leave it aside. That's truly what slack is.
So I have a question.
Yes.
Then how do you envisage using it? So at the beginning of the sprint, you reserve 30% capacity.
So whatever is appropriate, right? I've done different things. I've done 10%, I've done 20%.
My
So-
point was not on how much percentage, but more like at the end of this, towards the halfway or 3/4 of the sprint, you realize you finished everything that you considered that you would and now you're at the slack point where you have nothing planned. So are you still going to leave it like that?
No, so if you're in a 10-day sprint and you're on day 6 and team finished everything that they picked up for that sprint, then you do go to the product backlog, go to the product owner and say, what's the next highest priority item that we should pick up that will fit in the amount of time you're needing in the sprint? Okay, but your overall time in the sprint, if you said you're going to leave aside 20% slack for that team, then it is still based on that 80% team capacity. So even on the remaining 4 days, it's only 80% of the 4 days.
Gotcha.
It is that sacred is how you have to treat it. That slack is that unused capacity that you're going to leave as your resource. It's like something you need to dip into on a rainy day. And we all know when we do software development work, it rains every day. It rains every day because it's creative work, things are planned. If it was something that can be done without any surprises, there would be robots writing code. Yes? So that's the reason.
So Manjit, nowadays what we do in our agile planning meeting, we say, okay, we will have 8-hour day, with a 6 hours capacity for everyone, remaining 2 hours is for, not just about Slack, but more like interactions and that comes up, and more like team meetings, interactions, and things like that. So
that's not really truly Slack.
Right. Team meetings are part of
Because
your
they're still doing work. You're not hands-on code, but you're still doing work, you're meeting, you're interacting with somebody. So that's not Slack. Slack is purely setting aside for, hey, I'm not going to do anything.
I think because if you add on team meetings and all, it will not.
Here is the thing. So this is why this is so hard for people to grasp. That time that you set aside as Slack always gets used.
But see, I think there is a point what he's saying, right, Manjit? So if, for example, if you're in a commercial role, that's fine. But if you're a contractor billing the client or something, how do you explain this Slack to a federal contractor?
Anybody?
No, actually, I'm a government product owner, and I give my team 3 to 4 priorities each sprint. The first one is usually either research or hardening, and that's really their slack time. Because of course, even though I make it their first priority, they're going to do their second thing that I give them, which is usually a list of features. Right. The second thing is all that stuff. So the first highest priority is when you have available time, I am giving you permission that if anybody says, hey, why are you reading that textbook?
Not many government.
My product owner, my government federal product owner says, my highest priority during the sprint was research.
You're a rare bird now. Yeah, that's why you also didn't hear that he used to have the whip, now he doesn't have the whip. The whip is on him. Now that explains it. No, I'm just kidding. I know Dave for a long time, so I can tease him. So please, don't think I'm being rude.
What he's saying is you all can tease me.
No, that's all. I'm not giving them permission. Somebody else was going to say something. Was it Scott? Was it
It's a hard sell, as
Yes.
I said, you know.
Yes. So this is, I understand it's very difficult. So this is, just remember, it's like, you go to a personal trainer and you say, I want to become healthy. The person tells you, this is the regimen you need to follow. I can't do that. It's not for everybody. Right? So that's the thing. This is what would help you, but if you can't do it, you can't do it.
But it's also, I mean, I think another answer to your question about the billing question is, like you said, all that slack time gets used.
It gets used.
It's not like everyone finishes after 6 hours and they're wondering what to do for the next 2 hours. It's that.
It's the surprises that come up that
Yeah.
then you have that. But it's not buffered though, because buffer is intentional. You know this will take me 6 hours to read, but it could take me longer. So I'm going to actually say it will take me 8 hours to read. That's a buffer. You're intentionally adding the time. That's buffer. But Slack is completely blanket time set aside with nothing planned during that time.
Can I reframe?
Yes.
Reframe it a little?
Yeah, please.
So there's that old Donald Rumsfeld thing of there are known knowns, known unknowns, and unknown unknowns. If I'm understanding what I think Manjit's saying is, buffer is for known unknowns.
Unknowns, correct.
Slack is for unknown unknowns.
I like that. That's one way to look at it. Okay. By the way, there's a great book by that title, by this gentleman, Tom DeMarco.
I don't have time to read.
Highly recommend it. Highly recommend it. When I coach executives, this is the first book I give them. This is the first book I give them.
One thing to talk about in this context is also how work expands to consume the time.
Yes.
So that is one of the fears from management, that you leave the slack and people are just going to take that much longer to finish the work.
That is why it has to be the right amount. And it varies from team to team and the nature of the work and the domain of the work. It can't be the same for every organization. In some organizations, 10% is appropriate, in some teams, 20%, in some teams, I've done 30%. I've done 30%. They were in an environment where there had a lot of unknown issues come up in production. You couldn't plan for it. Well, let's set aside some time. If it happens, it will happen. Doesn't happen, we will do other work.
How transparent do you need to be?
100% transparent.
With the team?
When I coach the
clients?
team, I am 100% transparent. Your sprint capacity is only 70%. 30% is slack. We'll deal with it when surprises come. Very transparent. Product owner knows, executives know, the project
teams.
manager knows, the team knows. Yeah, 100% transparent.
But isn't also part of your explanation of the work expands to fill the time? Yes, right?
Yeah, the work expands to
fill
fill the
the time. Is when you talked about these organizations that were reporting being at 96% capacity, people are already expanding.
They're already expanded.
To fill
That's the
the
problem.
time.
In your case, in that instance, it's actually different. Here, the work is expanding because it's truly there are surprises coming.
Yeah, environmental challenges.
That's right.
Yeah, Manjit, share an example. I worked for international phone companies when we switched from circuit switching to the IP networks that we have now. One of the tough things for some of the management people to get their head around was in a switch network, you have fixed capacity. However, if you don't talk on the phone, nothing is sent over a circuit switch. So you have idle capacity there. You just can't see because it's nailed up. That in data networks, you have to leave some space because you want to get the statistical gain of multiplexing multiple users across a network. And if your utilization goes over 75%, right, the math, just the queuing theory is going to say
Right.
you're going to asymptotically approach no throughput because of congestion. So there's this math thing, and then there's let's say some emotional beliefs there. So I find it amazing sometimes that management people with degrees in engineering and business and maybe took the math courses are willing to suspend belief of that chapter from the calculus course, right?
That's a great example, though. Yeah.
It's like visualizing this. You can't move the pieces around if you don't have that empty spot.
Right.
And then this is the best statement from this book, and it's so true. The more efficient you are, the least likely you are to be able to change. Efficiency actually is counterproductive here. It has the opposite effect. It has the opposite effect of trying to be agile. Now that doesn't mean that agility it sacrifices efficiency. That's the most common conclusion people jump to. That's not what it's saying. Agility drives its own efficiency in its own way, but this efficiency is different. This is resource allocation efficiency, resource utilization efficiency. This is process efficiency, where you're so hung up on the process. This goes back to the Agile Manifesto.
Yeah, that's what I was. It's not a personal efficiency.
That's right.
And efficient will change.
Yeah. So this is what happens when you don't have slack. You're so highly efficient, there is no room to maneuver and do anything better because there's no room to be creative and think about improvements.
If you change something, things fall off into cracks.
Yeah. Cool. Okay. And I love this quote from Peter Drucker.
Maximizing the work not done.
Exactly. Maximize the amount of work not done. One of the Agile principles. Okay. Principle number 10. That's what it is.
Nerd.
Yes.
Do you have any, I've done this in groups and organizations, and they've been previously part of a culture where they were always behind schedule. So when they weren't behind schedule, they just didn't do anything because they didn't have the stimulus of not being behind schedule. So it was a very hard transformation to say, well, there's work in front of you, you should
Because they
do
were
it.
used to it.
They were so used to being behind, like, they didn't work hard unless they were behind schedule. And they didn't know, they were lost.
Yeah.
I just kind of said, well, you're supposed to be working, you're getting paid. That's
So
all
I
I
did
can say to them.
I did a certified Scrum product owner training recently, and these two individuals came up to me during one of the breaks and said, can we ask you a question? I said, sure. And their company just introduced Agile. They were told to do Agile. They didn't get any training, but they were supposed to practice Scrum. So I said, how's it going? He said, well, we have a very large product backlog. How large? 50,000 items on the product backlog. 50,000 items on the product backlog. I said, how many do you get done in a year? About 1,000. 50,000 items on the product backlog, they get about 1,000 done. Why bother with the other 49,000? Just throw them away.
At least 48,000, right?
Right? So, I mean, where do you begin with a situation like this? How do you, so just, would you think Agile is going to help them? Agile can't help them. Another organization, this is the same insurance company, which the CIO said, we want to do half the things, no, sorry, I'm mixing clients. This is a different client. It's a tobacco company. They want to do Agile. So I asked them, okay, how many, yeah, separate story. We'll talk about it after my presentation. So how many active projects do you have currently? Guess, anybody wants to guess the number? 189 projects, ongoing projects at the same time. Do you think all 189 are critical for the company to survive? Even you all know the answer to that. 189 active projects at any given time with a team of like 30 developers. How do you do that?
With a team of 30?
Yeah, how do you do that?
You don't.
You don't. But 189, all are active. 189 active projects.
Did you play the penny game with them, or?
Not yet. Not yet. I'm supposed to go back and engage with them next month. So that's what's happening in organizations. So then, how can Agile thrive in an environment? Agile can't help you with anything. Agile can't help you with anything. It may have a little bit of a dent, but it can't fix the problems. It can't fix the problems. Right? The first thing you have to do is simplify. That's why I was showing that video at the beginning. You have to simplify. Make things simple. Don't do stuff that's not necessary. There is too much complexity already. Don't add to the complexity. If you want to drive agility in an organization, keep things simple. Keep things simple. You know why Chipotle was so successful? Chipotle was the first company which came up with that model of a la carte. You pick, protein and vegetables and bowl or tortilla, right? Chipotle was the first one. Why are they so successful? It's simple. We have step 1, step 2, step 3, you're done. You checked out.
Didn't Subway have something similar?
No, nobody had that. Chipotle was the first one. And now everybody follows that model. Everybody follows that model because it works. It works. It's simple. It's straightforward. There's no confusion.
I think it succeeded more because it was on-site customization.
No. It is both simple and it gives the customer the full power. You choose what you want, and it's simple. They made it so simple. That's why it's so successful. Right? And there are a lot of examples, by the way. Anybody here have used Basecamp? Project management tool Basecamp? Anybody? You should look up. You should read the blog by the company founder, Jason Fry. His blog is called Noise versus Signal. You should read his blog. He talks about it. They used to have 7 products. They decided they're going to focus on only one. They made the other 6 open source. They said we'll focus on only one. It makes the most money for us. We're going to focus on only one. They changed the name of the company from 32 Signals to Basecamp. And he has a great book called Rework. If you're interested in reading Rework. His name is Jason Fry. So these are the benefits of Slack. Okay. So basically, the reason companies are really have this aspiration to be more agile is because of the disruption that I talked about in the beginning. And the disruption is scary. 70% of the companies that were on the Fortune 1000 list 10 years ago are no longer on that list. they're gone. It's that scary. The average tenure of a CEO 20 years ago of a Fortune 5000 company was 13 years. The average tenure now is 3.5 years. It's 3.5 years. So there is tremendous disruption, and the organizations that are thriving are the ones that can manage the complexity and the uncertainty by truly creating that agility within the organization. Agile is a means to achieve that. It's not the end goal. Adopting Agile cannot be the end goal. Agile is a means to achieve agility. And sometimes you may not even need to use any formal Agile methods to drive agility in your organization. Just reduce the complexity. Make things simple. Because the simple they are, the easier it is to change and adapt. The simple they are, the easier it is to change to adapt. The more complex it is, the more harder it is to adapt. It takes down your agility. It's just as simple as that. There's nothing more to it. There's nothing more to it. Right? It's like trying to climb Mount Everest. Right? If you're going to try to climb Mount Everest, you can't climb Mount Everest, driving an SUV up there with a big wagon in the back and all the stuff. You take the bare minimum stuff, because conditions can change. You need to adapt. You may have to, leave some gear behind. That's the way you have to operate. You have to be lean in terms of keeping things simple. The few things you have, the few things you have to change. When the environment changes, when the circumstances changes, when the market conditions change. So having a leadership that has a clear vision of what agility they want and why they want it is what drives everybody to be aligned in achieving that. Otherwise, people have no idea. Why are we doing Agile? Well, because we can reduce the number of bugs. Really? Well, fine, but that may only be temporary. That may only be temporary. You have a new set of team members and they may have some other reason why they are doing Agile. So what you need for true agility is the leadership. Have a clear vision. Have the commitment to drive this, because it takes time. Be deliberate about your intention. And lastly, have the patience to stick through it. It takes time. It doesn't happen overnight. Questions?
Okay.
Your sticky David.
Yeah, all right, I gotta get that sticky. Okay, here we go. All right, so you said we're gonna get the slides. What is the book that you mentioned about floor scrubbing, that had that floor scrubbing anecdote?
I will tell you
Actually,
right
I
now.
got into meaty questions. So there was so much meat in this.
Probably trying to teach a little bit of humility.
Yeah, I learned so much when I listened to Manjit speak, and it's all like, almost everything he says is stuff that I feel like I knew intuitively, and then he does this like Yoda stuff, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that is so brilliant. I knew that, but I forgot that.
That's recording all that stuff, right?
What you say.
Give me 1 second. So that's what I love about long flights to India. I got like 5-6 books I read on my Kindle. Come on.
Well, let's all go to India. Seriously.
Well, I'm going down here.
17 hours.
Where does it go?
From Chicago.
I'm not in that.
Done it, it's not fun.
So while he's doing that, I'm going to tell you that I keep promising myself.
Tell me if you have any other question.
I think you're going to have to look up these other questions. So, or here, one of my other questions was, I'd like to hear more about the tobacco company that's going agile, in what ways they want, what they're trying to do.
We'd like to go to market.
Yeah, I'm curious.
That's the insurance company. The tobacco company is separate. Yes, go on. What else?
So I'm just curious what it is that they're asking.
Once the
me.
camera is off, I can tell you.
Okay, sounds good. I wanted to kind of comment, hear your thoughts, that I think almost everything that you said, even though it was one of your ingredients was trust, I just feel like so many of the other things boil back to that, you know?
It does.
In order to give the team slack, I have to trust that the teams are going to do useful things with that time. Where's the slack list? Anyway,
So I,
here it is. Okay. Employee empowerment. In order to empower my employees, I have to trust that they're going to do good things with that empowerment, and I have to trust that they're not going to leave after I give them all that empowerment and whatnot. Anyway, I just wanted to hear a little bit more of what you.
so first, to answer to your question, the book is called 2-Second Lean.
2-second lean.
2-second lean. So the letter 2, I mean the number 2,
Okay.
then second, and then lean. So it's basically saying that you can be lean in 2 seconds.
Okay.
2-second lean.
Is that a
And the author? Do you know the
Author, I'll tell you. Author. 2-second lean. Paul Akers, A-K-E-R-S.
You sure not talking about diet or something?
No, I'm not talking about that. That's what I thought when I took it up.
It's the Atkins diet now.
Exactly. 2-second lead.
It's all chicken.
That's a book, that's the author. So the question about trust, absolutely. Absolutely, that's the key.
And I can't overstate how many like anti-patterns or how many business practices that are just mainstream all come from the premise that you just can't trust. You can't trust these, so you come up with all of these techniques where you can mitigate the fact that you can't trust someone.
So I'll tell you my, go ahead, okay.
Well, I think and trust is more complex too, right? So if you look at Kasparowski's work on building trust and high-performing teams, there's a lot that a scrum master or a product owner, people can do to build trust within teams. The challenge becomes then, where is the trust in the level of middle management? Where is the trust in leadership? And where is the trust in that kind of area between big L leadership and middle management? Because even if you've got created great trust within your team and it's a high-performing team, if there's no trust at the level of management or leadership, it's all pointless.
Let me ask you a simple question. You're working with somebody, right? Once you start working with them, would you rather know upfront whether they're trustworthy, or do you rather find out much later on that they're not trustworthy? Which one? Upfront, right? So what's the best way to know that? I tell you my personal answer to that. When I hire people for my company, I tell them I'll give you 100% trust. The moment you violate it, you're out. I will start with 100% trust. Now it depends on what the violation is. If it's something minor and they didn't know, then it's a different thing. But if it's something significant, then you're out, right? So I give you 100% trust. It's for you to lose it. You have my 100% trust. So when I operate with that, I rather find out sooner rather than later whether I can trust somebody. Rather than giving them the keys to the kingdom and then finding out later, you find out sooner. So it comes from a very different philosophy, but it is, if you operate that way, it also develops a very different relationship with the person.
Right.
Yeah, because the other more predominant way is you have to earn your trust.
Right. Right. Yeah.
I'll give you a
show me.
little bit,
But
and then if
you
I
earn my
see I
trust.
can trust you,
But
then
that's my
I'll trust you
personal
a little
philosophy.
more.
And I've been burnt, I'll be honest, I've been burnt. But that's okay, I rather got burnt sooner rather than later. I got burnt on small things rather than on big things.
Right, if I could go back to your Google credit card metaphor, I'm sure that there are a lot of misuses of that credit card, but it's probably cheaper still
Yes.
for them to
For
do
the
that.
small percentage of abuse versus the large percentage of resources, background resources. The team that is responsible for managing the reimbursement and the approving and payment and all of that.
Fewer growth opportunities for the accounting department.
True.
When somebody lost his job.
But it can be a lean
Yes.
accounting department rather than a
Yeah.
bloated accounting department. Right? So just a different way of looking at it, that's all. And I'm not saying, again, what I'm saying is that doesn't mean that it works in every environment. It depends on how you think, how your culture what your philosophy is, what your values are. So it depends on that.
Appetite for risk is what determines a lot of that.
Well, I think it's appetite for the belief in the good in every human,
Yes.
and that they're here to achieve their best and to deliver the best for you and for themselves.
Though, actually, I kind of disagree.
That's okay.
On a spiral, integrated spiral, integral spiral kind of way, I often find myself being very orange, and in those moments, it's still selfish for me to say, it's easier for me to trust you than to monitor you. It's still more production that I get out of you. Right, going back to the credit card thing, even if you abuse it, right? If you're abusing it less than the cost of somebody to monitor you, I'm still saving money. I mean, it's not necessarily that I think you're a great human being, it's still more efficient.
But I don't see that to be contradictory.
Okay,
Both of those can coexist,
sure.
right? Both of
It's not
those
saying you
can
have to be teal to do this.
Yeah.
Right.
So if that abuse continues and if it is a pattern, then you would take some corrective action.
I'd like you
I was
to
going to
instill
say
this
that.
in every school teacher. Everyone gets an A+. And then you show me you can keep the A+, or,
Right.
right?
Yeah,
But
yeah.
everybody has brilliance. Everybody has trustworthiness. I'll give it all to you, and you can keep it
Yeah.
until you can't.
And I don't remember in which book I read this. This was many years ago. I think in 2012 I read a book in which they talked about how they did an experiment with two sets of school children, where in one they start off, some of you, if you can relate to which book I'm referring to, they talk about, they start with that every child in this class has a full potential and they treat them that way. And then they take that same material and they teach to another class where they start with the premise that these kids are no good and don't have the potential, and then they teach them the same material. And the difference is just staggering. Just staggering. How you treat people is what you get out of them. That's really what it is.
Very true, very true.
Okay, we're, I believe, up with our clock for this evening. Other questions, anybody?
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.